My name is Destiny Watkins. I'm 27 years old and I live in Post Falls, Idaho. I have more than one diagnosis. So I grew up with an intellectual disability, and I was in special education through school and had the extra help in school, which helped me due to the lack of support in my home environment. And results to some of the social interactions, I had some behavioral issues and acting out as a teen and was misdiagnosed. Resulting to being misdiagnosed, I was put on the wrong medications and everything for years. And coming off all of those meds led me into a wheelchair, which is called Tardive Dyskinesia and Dystonia, and a type of gait disorder that I cannot pronounce. And I've been in a wheelchair for 6 years, and I no longer take any pharmaceuticals at all. I do all natural. It affects my life in a lot of different ways because one morning I woke up and I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't talk and I was shaking and I had no feeling in my legs and stuff. And in result to that affecting my life, well, before I was in a chair, I walked like 20 to 30 miles a day. Walking was my passion. So it kind of led to having some mental health challenges like depression and anxiety. And I had a lot of anger. And now, after a few years, I went through that struggle. And then I became a self-advocate and advocating for what was an obstacle for me and making my voice be heard, because I didn't have somebody to fight my battles for me. So now I'm advocating to make a change for other people in my situation, to have accessible sidewalks or bus route or just access to transportation in general to keep their independence, or just to be treated with respect in housing or at doctor's offices and stuff. And yes, I do struggle still with my disability. Like I can't go and just play sports whenever, or, hang out with friends that have two working legs. Like it takes me a little bit longer because of my chair. And I have a couple friends that get embarrassed because I will be the person that I'll push myself in my wheelchair and go in the store and grab a grocery cart and push that too. And they're standing next to me. And it's like, I'm super independent. And so they get looked at by other people in the store, and I'm like, just blow it off, So it affects like the emotional distress that causes other people to look at you differently. I would like to not be in a wheelchair. And I mean, yes, granted, I would have the perspective of what it's like. And I think me personally, I would still advocate for others with disabilities just because I find that was my calling in school. So I see that I could have went both ways, but the one thing I would change was definitely not be in a wheelchair. I love that I've been able to use my wheelchair as an outlet of resources and being able to travel a lot and go see beautiful places, but also advocating for a change in our medical system and having that better outcome of life. Basically, we're different. And with our experience, we tend to probably get more frustrated with things that might not be so frustrating for the most population. But it's just taking that time and patience and finding your voice and finding a good support system with having a unique experience of, growing up with a disability or having a disability that appears, throughout your lifehood. And just finding the people that can support you and be your advocate until you can advocate for yourself. There has been incidents where I spoke up and said, yeah, they're not helping me because I want to have my own independence. So I can do this by myself one day without somebody with me. So it's building my strength up. It's building my courage to do it on my own. I don't need people to do things for me. I want to learn to do them myself, which makes me more independent. And so when people force their help on me, I say, are you meeting my needs by forcing your help, or can you just let me do it myself? You know, just because I'm in a chair doesn't mean I can't be independent and do things. Just because we have the same diagnosis as somebody else does not mean we could be treated the same, because we all come from different home environments, different skills, different triggers, maybe on top of our disability. Therefore, don't treat us the same. Don't limit us to things because of a disability, because some people don't have the support that we should have with a disability. And know that we are trying. It might be different. Our best is different than a healthcare provider's best. You know, we learn differently. We have a different speed on things. And so don't assume that we're not trying when we are. Doctors need to understand we didn't go to school to be a doctor, so don't use doctor language. You should learn to use plain language for people, especially with people with disabilities. Or if they can't and they don't have the time, maybe they should have a nurse assistant in their office that can communicate with a variety of disabilities, or have alternative stuff to use, like pictures or a tablet to help explain things, like a visual thing. Having an intellectual disability, I learn differently. I have to sometimes plan things out so I can be prepared. It takes me a little bit longer to maybe read or write or fill out paperwork. So if they give me homework, it's a little bit different for me than somebody without an intellectual disability and just struggling with mental health. And so sometimes it's really hard to find a counselor that is willing to work with your other disabilities and not just your mental health. They need to take in consideration, because being in a wheelchair, going into a counseling office, again, they have all of these toys and stuff for kids, maybe not for a teenager or a younger adult. And so having no space for somebody in a wheelchair when you go into their office kind of adds more stress and anxiety, and feeling like, well, I don't fit in your room, so I feel uncomfortable now. When you're in a chair going into a building and knowing that it's going to be an obstacle because you can't fit your chair in like you should be able to, it causes a lot of stress and anxiety, because you're like, I don't want to hit something. I don't want to run over something or get a rug stuck in your wheels, and then somebody coming and helping you, and then they look at you, oh, why don't you have somebody with you? Because you can't be independent because of one little mistake. So they need to take in consideration a little bit of what we went through growing up and where we are now and the skills that we need to learn. I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't be successful and be an independent person, because you wouldn't know that I wouldn't really know how to read or write, but I use technology to help me. And that's why I have to be planning things and take my time. I am part of a couple different advocacy groups with the IDD-MH Research Partnership. It's a foundation that was funded through PCORI, and it started off at Boston University. And then I was involved in another project with somebody else at Boston University for peer-to-peer mentoring, and then helped develop some questions for people with disabilities. I got involved with the Center for Start Services with Joni, and it's Joni Beasley, and she's amazing. I actually met with her in Washington, D.C. at an expert panel for SAMHSA. I've worked with Utah State. You guys reached out to me as an advocate, and now I'm doing a 3-year program with a few different states, and it's called The Truth and Reconciliation of the Past and the Future. And we're working with Georgetown, Center for START, and University of Florida. I do a lot of my doTERRA essential oils as a wellness advocate. I help educate people on a natural approach. And I obviously volunteer in my local city with helping get sidewalks and streetlights and, things up to accessibility codes for people that want to be independent and utilize our community. We're not all the same just because of the same diagnosis that we have in common. We're all individuals. We all have individual supports and needs. Just because we have that same disability does not mean we're the same. Be patient, take the time, and put the effort into it. That right there will help the bond and the connection, and you get further and more success when you take the time and effort to put into somebody with a disability. And not everything comes in like a 15-minute appointment or even a 45-minute appointment. Sometimes it takes somebody an hour if you're in counseling, or even a primary physician appointment. A good doctor takes the time and puts the work into it, and just to communicate. And if they know they're meeting with that person, maybe have it blocked out or set aside just to help accommodate to that person, to make them feel like they're important, not just a burden on their shoulders or just another person that they see. Because a person with a disability kind of takes that a little bit more personal than somebody that might not have a disability.